It is week 3 of the pre-preview. Apparently I can't speak, and I know it's week 3 of our pre-preview because my air conditioning went out, so that means we are in the middle of summer, meaning we are close to college football.
We are in the dog days, Jake. We are in the dog days, and the worst part of this is it's the hottest part of the year, and we don't really have that many sports. We're kind of down on the sports right now, which sucks, but we're going to get through it together with each other. This is when we got to lean in, folks. This is where men are made.
You know it's boring when news is who is going to be the host for the ESPY Awards. A, I didn't realize the ESPYs were a big thing anymore. B,
I didn't know that happened.
This is very low where we are talking about who is hosting the ESPYs.
So all right, tell me this. Maybe I'm an idiot. When do the ESPYs happen?
I have always understood that the ESPYs happen like the day after the MLB All-Star game because baseball takes that day off. So that's like the day where there's absolutely like nothing, like unless it's like soccer or something like that. Like there's no sports because baseball usually they play basically every other day from April to October, but they take that one day off after the All-Star game. So that's when I haven't checked the date, but that's I think when it used to be. Who knows if that's still when it is? But the important thing is we've got SEC pre-preview. If you've been joining us for the last couple of weeks, we've done ACC pre-preview, Big Ten pre-preview. What the pre-preview is, I've said that so many times, and we're only 2 minutes into this episode.
What'd you say?
The pre-preview. It's the pre-preview.
Okay, pre-preview.
Yeah. William and I are going through one thing that we like and dislike about every team. We've ranked teams 1 for the SEC, 1 to 16, to have a baseline for rankings. And we'll dive into this, and we're going to be 100% honest. I haven't dove into too many of these. I had to sit here and look up who Ole Miss was going to start at quarterback this year. I'll be transparent. It took me a second to kind of remember.
There's a couple teams I could not name the quarterback off the top of my head. Ole Miss was one of them. Mississippi State was one of them. Couldn't recall. So this is why
today I learned Zach Calzada is still playing college football.
He is. He's earning his doctorate in athletic leadership and X's and O's. Hey, you know what? Maybe he's the understudy of Mark Stoops. When Mark Stoops finally gets pushed out of Kentucky, he'll just take over as the head coach.
Let's just lean into that. So tied at 15.5, so tied at the very bottom, we have Kentucky and Mississippi State. Kentucky. What is something that you like about Kentucky this year?
You know, I just put yes. I because there's not. I like that they got Troy Stellato out of the portal from Clemson. I hate that for him, but I like that they have some playmakers on the outside. I don't know a lot about this Kentucky roster, and nobody jumps off the page at me. And then everything going on with Mark Stoops and his staff. I mean, he lost his longest tenured coach on the staff to Louisville. So
yeah, losing Vince Morrow, that is a massive, massive blow. I mean, he's been one of the best recruiters for Kentucky. He has helped bring some of those talented guys to the University of Kentucky, and he's been there more than a decade.
I mean, think about some of the guys, Jake. I mean, you got to think like he got Will Levis to transfer from Penn State, right? He's got who's the Brown,
Wandale Robinson.
Wandale Robinson. They got the guy Barian Brown that ended up transferring to LSU. Key that
Benny Snell was a great running back for Kentucky.
Dingle, the tight end who went to, I want to say, South Carolina or Arkansas, somewhere around that area. Or maybe he went to ACC school. Doesn't matter. Transferred out of Kentucky. Got a lot of good guys that they were growing. I mean, back from when you think about that Tax Slayer Gator Bowl from 2022, they had some dudes on those teams. And what are they doing now? O'Leary. They got O'Leary from NC State. Or am I backwards?
Yeah.
Devin Leary, not O'Leary.
Yeah, Devin Leary. Even though he didn't really pan out great, he ended up being not as good. I was trying to think of him actually.
He had the second fastest pass at the combine behind Joe Milton.
Yeah. Throw that ball 90 yards from his knees.
Yeah, Bazooka Joe, baby. But
What
now,
do you not like about Kentucky?
the news around Mark Stoops and his staff. So essentially, the most tenured coach leaving. It just that just tells you that this dude doesn't believe in the program. He's getting out. He's tired of dealing with it. And then to go to Louisville out of all places, that tells me he still wants to coach. He still thinks he can coach, and then he has enough connections in the area that he doesn't want to go too far. Louisville opens the door for him, so that's good for him.
Yeah, that's straight up a rivalry. Louisville versus Kentucky. That is a rivalry. It may not be like the biggest, or when people hear Louisville versus Kentucky is, some of the biggest rivalries, but that is a rivalry. It's an in-state rivalry. They play.
Yeah.
So
they play.
For me, I have Zach Calzada at least has experience at quarterback. I think it'd be worse
if you actually had, all right.
He's got a lot of experience. There's a reason he's still playing college football, because if you were good, you'd be in the NFL. What I hate is that Mark Stoops has a massive buyout. Mark Stoops' buyout is $44 million.
But Jake, think about this. Do you think Kentucky? I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time Kentucky's been relevant?
Oh, I mean, Mark Stoops has been relevant, for the majority of his tenure at Kentucky. But the problem is, how long do you say, well, you bought yourself time because you did so well?
That's my point. Is the fan base unhappy with Kentucky, or are they just so preoccupied with basketball they don't really care what's going on with football as long as they're winning enough games to make a bowl?
Yeah,
this is me speaking out of ignorance, because I don't know enough from Kentucky fans. Like, are Kentucky fans fed up with Mark Stoops? I don't know. I think they're like, hey, he wins us 7 games a year.
I think there's also part of it that he was trying to leave to go to A&M, and
that
then
hurts.
He kind of got pushed back, and you feel like you're the ex-girlfriend that the boyfriend came running back to because the prettier girl said no. Like that. Well, that's honestly what it feels like.
Actually, the prettier girl's parents said no because
yes, it was the prettier girl's parents.
Yeah.
Yes, and the grandparents with all the money.
That's right.
So it feels like that there's a chance that they might not be super happy with Mark Stoops, that he came back, goes 4-8 this year. It's not looking like it's going to be a good year. How many years in a row do you take a 3 or 4 win team before you go, yep, like this isn't it? We've got to figure a way out of this $44 million buyout.
Yeah. Speaking of
bad situations. So the other one we had tied here, I had Mississippi State at the bottom. You had Kentucky at the bottom, and then we both flipped at 15. So Mississippi State, I love that Mike Leach was one time their head coach. That's what I love about the program. Mike Leach was one time their head coach. I mean, there's not much around this team this year to look at and go, yeah, I can't wait for Mississippi State football. Like, they were 2-10. They got absolutely boat raced by Toledo last year. Like, that game wasn't close. Was not close. Jeff Lebby, there was rumors that he was going to try to get Jackson Arnold because he was the head coach, or he was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Blake Shapen has been around for a while at quarterback. I look at this Mississippi State team, and there's not much where I go, yep, I'm really into them this year. I think they're going to struggle with basically every game. They get Arizona State, which early in the year we're going to find out what Mississippi State can do, because Arizona State should still be a pretty solid team.
Yeah.
What I hate is basically everything else about this program. I just do not think it's in a good shape right now. Maybe Jeff Lebby will come out of nowhere. Maybe he's going to be an offensive-minded guy, and he'll figure out a way to pull out, 4 or 5 wins this year. But right now I'm looking at it, and I think there's like 2 wins on the schedule.
Put it on a T-shirt. Can Jeff Lebby pull out?
That's the important thing.
And I will say the reason I have Mississippi State 1 spot above Kentucky is because of, I feel like you at least have some sort of solidarity in Jeff Lebby. You didn't see him trying to leave. You don't see coaches, escaping.
Where's he going to go?
Well, that's true, but same with Mark Stoops apparently. But they're returning 16 players, so they're one of the top teams in returning players, not necessarily returning production, but returning players. 9 guys on offense, 7 guys on defense. I do like that. You have some sort of continuity that you're building. However, the guys that you're returning made you 2-10 last year. So,
how much can you really want to return? Yeah.
So, and you have some young guys. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what this team can do. I like the amount that they brought back. They didn't lose too much from the portal because, again, who's poaching Mississippi State's, roster? But they have at least more consistency than Kentucky does, and that's the only reason I ranked them one spot above.
One spot above these Kentucky and Mississippi State. I had Arkansas at 14. You had them at 13. So we both agree that Arkansas is likely going to be at the bottom. The one thing I liked about Arkansas is that they should have a new coach next year. The thing that I don't like is that their fan base is going to have to suffer through this for one more year or at least half a year or whatever. Like Sam Pittman's been on the hot seat, it feels like, basically since he took this job. He had one good year, but basically the last 2 or 3 years, every year we get to the end and it's hot seat. It's hot seat. It's hot seat.
Good.
And I would say last year they finished 7-6. They had a really good win over Tennessee. They had Taylor Green, Malachi Singleton. They figured out ways to win a couple of games that they maybe shouldn't have won. But I am not sold on this. I think Taylor Green can be good. I just don't know if he's consistent enough. He takes a lot of sacks. He can run and he can move with his legs, but he also is indecisive at times. And Sam Pittman is not necessarily the best offensive-minded coach in college football. He's a former offensive line coach. I know your goal is to surround yourself with the offensive and defensive-minded guys to make that program run. But I just don't see that happening. I mean, he hired Bobby Petrino at one point, for goodness sake.
Yeah, that was. Well, he's still there, right?
Even worse.
Yeah. To piggyback, I hate the same thing that you kind of hate. Stan Pittman's been on the hot seat since he's gotten that job. It seems like every year he's on the hot seat. I like Sam Pittman. I think he's a good recruiter. I think he's a good offensive line coach. I think that's where the conversation stops. He hasn't been able to get Arkansas over the hump. They seem to get close here and there. They absolutely blew a game against Oklahoma State last year. That maybe that changes the trajectory of that season.
Oklahoma State was terrible last year. Oklahoma State had 3 wins.
Right, but they turn around and they beat Tennessee, who's a playoff team, with their backup quarterback. They lost Taylor Green during that game, and Malachi Singleton came in and finished the job. But I do like Taylor Green. He's transferred from Boise State. This will be his second year in the program. He brings the playmaking ability, which can hurt you sometimes. But when you have a team like Arkansas that isn't known, outside of the guy who's the wide receiver who just went to the Titans. Why am I forgetting everyone's name when we start talking? Deion Burks. Does that sound right?
Traylon Burks.
Traylon Burks. You get a receiver here and there that comes out of Arkansas that's pretty darn good, but when you don't have that plethora of playmakers on the outside, it's nice to have a playmaking quarterback who can make things happen. When a guy's running around, a few things can happen. They're either going to turn the ball over, there's going to be a holding penalty, or somebody's going to bust loose. I mean, people can only cover somebody for so long, and if you create windows by moving the pocket, then you have an opportunity to make some plays. So Arkansas has a chance to play spoiler with a couple people this year, but I don't think they're going to do much outside of that. Also, shout out Sumter's finest, Justice Boone, who transferred to Arkansas from Florida.
Moving on to the next team that we got here. So we've got Vanderbilt. We had them, technically our combined score was 12 for them. I had them as the 13th team. You had them as the 11th. So a little bit of difference, but we both obviously agreed that they're going to be close to the bottom. Tell me what you like and what you don't like about Vanderbilt this year.
You want to say it at the same time? So I like – okay, let's do it. So 1, 2, 3. Diego Pavia's
confidence.
Yeah, so I love that about it. That's great. He gets up and he talks the talk. He walks the walk. But what we also hate is 1, 2, 3. Diego Pavia's confidence. So you can't get on a podcast and call out Alabama, call out South Carolina, call out the ACC, call out the Big Ten, which people have receipts. We live in the era of the internet, sir. So as soon as he came out and said that you don't want to go to the Big Ten, the Big Ten sucks, you should go to the SEC, people immediately brought up his stats against the Big Ten, which they were horrid. Now, give him some grace. He was at New Mexico State when those stats were compiled. You don't do that at Vanderbilt. You don't come out and say you're going to be the team in Tennessee. You haven't done enough yet. You have not done enough yet. So you blew a game against Alabama last year that you definitely should have won. No, they beat Alabama last year.
They did beat Alabama.
Beat Alabama last year. I'm thinking of South Carolina. Sorry. But you do enough in some of the games, but then you go and get blown out by other teams. You lost to Georgia State. So you're not doing enough. Your culture isn't there. You're not consistent. You're not beating the teams you should beat. You're doing enough in the games that everybody can get up for. Everybody can get up to play Alabama, right? That's exciting. It'd be great to be David versus Goliath. If you can't get up to play against Georgia State and treat those two teams the same, you're never going to have a consistent program, and you're not going to run the state of Tennessee, period. So let's just go ahead and clear the air. Unless Diego Pavia can come out and beat a Ball State in the same breath as beating a Missouri, a South Carolina, I don't want to hear it. So his confidence is going to make he's given too many people bulletin board material. Not a good move.
I think we should put Diego Pavia and Tommy Castellanos on a podcast and see who can make the hotter take, because both of them have just been making scorching takes. Both of them just say that they're going to dominate the conference and basically win the Heisman this year.
Yeah, and thank you. So, guys, get you a girl that can do both. I just got delivered ginger snaps and milk. So it just happens like that. We're talking football, eating some ginger snaps and milk. Get you a girl that can do both.
That's not my snack of choice, but you do you.
Or ginger snaps? You don't like ginger snaps?
I don't really eat too many ginger desserts except for around the holidays.
Ginger snaps are the Oklahoma football of cookies. They're underrated, and a lot of people should like them, but they don't know enough about them. They don't try them enough. They're scared because it says ginger. But
my wife criticized me for having pork rinds last week.
Oh yeah, we already got into that debate. Ginger snaps would be Andy Dalton.
Overrated?
No, they're gingers and they get a lot of snaps.
Ginger. Oh, that makes sense then. But yeah, back to Vanderbilt. I don't see how Diego Pavia can come out and make these comments. I appreciate the confidence. You want that in your quarterback where he's going to go out and say, like, yeah, we're going to win. You definitely don't want to come out and say, like, yeah, we're going to go 2-10 this year. So I really do think Clark Lea is putting it together there. I don't like Tim Beck as an offensive coordinator. I don't know how he keeps getting jobs as offensive coordinators. He keeps going down in programs. Like, he was one time like the Ohio State offensive coordinator, was one time like the Texas offensive coordinator, and then he's like still getting jobs.
He's at the best program in Tennessee, Jake.
Yes. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to make a bowl game. I mean, they played Georgia State again, but this time they got them at home, so maybe they'll be able to get them.
It is tough to play at Georgia State.
They got Virginia Tech, who they beat last year, but this time it's at Virginia Tech. You don't know what's going to happen there. I think they're going to drop a game out of conference, and I think that they're also going to lose a bunch of games in conference because I think a lot of these teams are better than what they were last year that they're playing. Like, I think Alabama is way better. Alabama's also going to be out for revenge. They play LSU, they play Missouri, they play Texas, they play Tennessee. Like, Auburn and Kentucky are the only two SEC games that I can see them winning. I don't see them beating South Carolina. I think they're going to go 2-6 in the SEC. I think maybe they go 3-1 in non-conference. I think they're a 5-win team. That's just where I got them.
Best team in Tennessee?
Could be somehow. All right, moving up here. We have Ole Miss, and this is a weird one here because I have Ole Miss up here at 9, and you have Ole Miss at 14.
What do they do to you? What do they do for you?
I have blind faith. So what I like is basically like I have blind faith that the offense is going to be there, that I think they're going to score enough points no matter who is taking snaps under center. I think that there's going to be enough playmakers on the outside that they're going to be able to still move the ball. They're still going to score points. And I think overall, I think there are parts of the schedule that are manageable. When you talk about Kentucky, Arkansas, and Mississippi State being 3 of their games in conference, You have Florida, which I think Florida's going to be difficult. Oklahoma, there's some question marks there, even though we're a bit higher on them. You could steal against South Carolina because it's at home. I think they're going to be I think they're a bowl team for sure. I don't think I'm looking at this team and going, they're somewhere between 5 and 7.
The only thing they do well, Jake, is they have probably the best names in college football on their roster. Let me read a couple of these names to you. You ready? Trinidad Chambliss. Great name. Great name. Let's go with a little bit of Dijon Stribling. I like that one. I might be a creative player in my NCAA 26 that I pre-ordered and then told my wife about after the fact. Diego Pounds. Great name, Diego Pounds. Come on down to Diego Pounds. He's definitely going to order.
Do you know Princey Uamani? How do you say his last name? Umani.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, his brother is playing for them this year.
That's good. So, what's his name?
Princewell. Same blah 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 last name.
We also have Suntarine Perkins. We have Xavier Harris Sr. Xavier Harris with an X. Zxavin. And then last but not least, Melukili Smith. Meluakai Smith. So really good.
Is it Malachi?
It ain't spelled like Malachi, but it might. Maeailuaki. This is the best names on the planet. Bryson Sanders. Is he related to Colonel Sanders? I don't know.
Probably.
Shakai Mills Knight. Deuce Alexander. Isaiah Hartrup. I mean, we've got Trey Nightingale. Come on, Jake. This is the creative team on NCAA. This is a creative team from NCAA 10.
Well, we know Lane Kiffin probably just went and created his own team.
Yeah, absolutely. But to get into Ole Miss and on some serious notes, I love that Lane Kiffin's always able, like you're saying, the confidence in that you have built, this bias that you've built is that I have to, is that Lane Kiffin's just always going to have a high-powered offense at Ole Miss. That could happen. That could. Austin Simmons could be a dude. Don't know anything about him. He's not a transfer. He's a true sophomore in their program. So if Lane Kiffin's starting him, he must know how to sling the rock. Just don't know anything about him. And first-year starters in the SEC, that's just tough. Which is what I don't like about the team. An unproven quarterback. And I don't think their defense was good enough. They lost a lot from their defense. That was a top defense last year, believe it or not. But they lost a lot from it. And I don't know if the offense can do enough to keep up with it. You know, the defense was good last year, but they also had an amazing offense. They lost 6 guys on the defense last year. So I don't know. You lose 35 total players when you include the transfer portal. It's going to be an entirely different roster. I don't like that consistency in the program. I think you're going to have a trip up here and there. Look at Colorado. Look at Florida State. You're going to have a trip up here and there. I think this is Ole Miss's trip up here.
I could see that. I could see this being the rebuild year. The next one we got here is we've got Auburn. I had Auburn at 12. You had them at 10. They come in at 11th in our rankings here. So for me, Auburn, I think the wide receiver room is going to be possibly one of the best in the SEC. When you talk about having Eric Singleton and you've got Cam Coleman and Malcolm Simmons as your wide receivers, I think you're going to have a pretty solid room there. The thing that I don't like is I think this quarterback room is an absolute mess. You bring in Ashton Daniels from Stanford. You've got Jackson Arnold. And you've got 5-star freshman Deuce Knight, which sounds like you should have a lot of talent in this room, but I'm not sold that it's going to translate into the offense this year. Jackson Arnold, was a former 5-star or Gatorade Player of the Year or whatever he was, just never really showed it at Oklahoma other than that one bowl game. He passed for like 300 yards. Ashton Daniels, I mean, how much do you take into consideration? He had some moments at Stanford, but there were also times where he was basically terrible, and you're probably not starting your 5-star freshman over 2 guys with experience.
Right.
But I like how long before the fan base starts calling for the 5-star freshman if it starts going poorly?
You got Baylor week 1.
First in completion, and then people were going to be
Get him
calling
out.
for.
I'm not doing this
Bring
again.
in-
I'm not. This isn't Peyton Thorne 2.0. But is he Peyton Thorne 2.0? I mean, essentially, I have the same thing as you, Jake. I love Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. I love that they brought in receivers. I don't know how to feel about Jackson Arnold. I was talking about Auburn with an Auburn fan today. Shout out Jackson. Not related to Jackson Arnold, just because you have the same first name doesn't mean you're related. And essentially what I was talking about was Auburn is going to live and die by their quarterback. If Jackson Arnold is good, Auburn could be a dark horse contender in the SEC and potentially win the conference. I think the defense is good enough. The defense is returning almost everybody. The defensive backs last year were littered with freshmen and sophomores. They now get older there. You go and you get Eric Singleton out of the portal, who's a stud wide receiver out of Georgia Tech. Cam Coleman, who I don't think enough people know about him, was a stud wide receiver coming out of high school. I think he was from Phoenix City, Alabama. Just a freaking stud. So you have dudes all over the place. Jackson Arnold, you now don't have 7 wide receivers on your roster with injury problems yet. So if you're going to be the guy, there's no more hiding anymore. There's no more hiding behind injuries. There's no more hiding behind anything. You have no choice but to perform, and you got to perform week 1 against Baylor. I think we'll know what Auburn's going to be after week 1. I don't like to do that a lot, but I think that's a good litmus test of who they are. But Jake, their first quarter of their season is just brutal. They go Baylor, South Alabama, another cupcake, and then they go Oklahoma. I want to say Missouri, Oklahoma, Missouri, and it's just like
they go Oklahoma, Texas A&M, by Georgia, Missouri.
There we go. Texas A&M was what I was thinking. So before they even get to October,
they've got 3 road games in September.
Right, it's going to be tough. They go to Baylor, they go to A&M, they go to what was the other team?
Oklahoma.
So good luck.
They have Bama at home technically at the end of the year. They have Bama at home at the very end of the year, but I don't.
And they can win that game. You know, who knows? So I have them at 10, but this is a team that could definitely shoot up. I mean, if Jackson Arnold has anything to him, if he can earn that 5-star rating, they'll be a really good team this year.
Next one we got in here at number 10, we have Tennessee. So I had Tennessee at 8. You had Tennessee at 12. So another one where there was a pretty big differential there. What do you not like, and what do you like about Tennessee?
Well, I hate that they don't have any proven playmakers. You have Mike Matthews, who was an athlete coming out of high school. Some guys were recruiting him as a safety, and some teams are recruiting him as a wide receiver. So who is he? You have Chris Brazel, who played some last year. He's a pretty good wideout out of Oregon State, I believe. A big target. You lose your quarterback. You lose Squirrel White. You lose, oh my gosh, the running back last year.
Dylan Sampson.
You lose Dylan Sampson, which was the heartbeat of that team and made the offensive line look a lot better. You have a lot of unproven playmakers on the outside. We'll see what happens. However, in the same breath, you have potential to have some explosive playmakers, and you add in a potential if Joey Aguilar wins the job. Dude's a playmaker. Dude is great on his feet. He can run. He's as accurate as Nico. There's not much difference, except I think he's a different runner. Nico, I think, is a more powerful runner. I think Joey's a more quick, a more nimble runner. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how he adapts to Josh Heupel's system. Joey being a guy who transferred out of App State to UCLA, then ends up, everybody knows the story, transferring from UCLA to Tennessee, crossing ships in the night. I'm not high on Tennessee. I don't think their defense is going to be any good. They lose a lot off that defense after last year. So we'll see. I'm not too high on them.
Yeah, the one thing I actually do like is the defense, mainly because Tim Banks has transformed that defense over the last couple of years. I mean, we're talking 2 years ago, Tennessee had one of the worst defenses in college football. Teams were just throwing all over them when they had Hendon Hooker, and they had some studs on that offensive side of the ball. The defense has become one of the bigger parts. Now, in the playoffs, they got shredded by Ohio State, but so did everybody else, basically. So they still have guys back on that defensive side of the ball. They still are going to have Jeremiah McCoy. They're still going to have Ricky Gibson. They're still on Boot Carter. They're going to have a bunch of guys still back on defense. They do lose their James Pierce. They lose a couple other big names and key playmakers off that defense side of the ball. They have 6 starters returning. But
8. They have 8 starters returning on the defense.
My bad.
So I didn't realize they were returning so much on defense. That was a misspeaking on my part.
But what I don't like was kind of what you alluded to is the quarterback position with that whole Nico situation, the timing of it. You go all of spring camp, you think that Nico is your starting quarterback, and then all hell breaks loose. Now you have Joey Aguilar, who comes over from UCLA after spending, the spring there. He was at App State last fall. You're either going with a transfer who has not done anything and won't do anything till fall camp, or a redshirt / true freshman if it's Jake Merklinger or their
George
true
McIntyre.
freshman, George McIntyre, which it won't be George McIntyre.
No, I think Merklinger has I wouldn't be shocked if Merklinger is the guy against Syracuse week 1. Would not be shocked.
That's the other thing is they open that season. Now it's in Atlanta, so it's way closer for Tennessee than it is for Syracuse. But that is not a game that they can just, test things out. They get East Tennessee the next week. That's where you can play around. But Syracuse, you just got to find a way to win. That's
where does East Tennessee rank in the Tennessee power rankings according to Diego Pavia?
Ooh, well, you've got Middle Tennessee and you've got East Tennessee. You think there's a West Tennessee?
Yeah, Memphis.
Memphis. They're there. I'm sure there's other Tennessee schools.
Chattanooga, Tennessee, Chattanooga.
Ooh, Chattanooga.
The Mocs.
Yeah. You should have played football there.
Should have. They didn't offer me.
At 9 here, we have Missouri. So I had Missouri at 10. You had Missouri at 7. What do you like about Mizzou this year?
I love their defense. They're returning a top 10 defense in the country, and they're getting guys like not Jeremiah Trotter. What's his brother's name? Josiah Trotter. Out of the portal from West Virginia. I think this defense is going to be really, really good this year. You get Bo Perbula out of the portal. Obviously, he plays offense. He's a quarterback. But I think this defense has a chance to be a top 10 defense in the country. I mean, you're returning 9 guys, and then 2 of the guys that are coming in are transfer guys. So you essentially have the same defense as last year. The offense, on the other hand, is going to look completely different. So what I hate is that you're losing the wide receiver core of Luther Burden and Theo Weiss. So losing those guys is going to be really, really tough, especially having a new quarterback come in. I'm not high on the Missouri offense this year. I love Bo Perbula. I think he adds a wrinkle to the offense that they didn't have in Brady Cook. His running ability is pretty high, pretty good. I mean, I like the game against Wisconsin. I thought he looked pretty good against when he was playing for Penn State. But you don't have the dudes out there like that I know of. I mean, Luther Burden was a freak. Theo Weiss was a freak.
They Cody Schrader like 2 years ago,
running
who was
back.
a great running back.
And you saw what happened to the offense last year when they didn't have him because he left 2 years ago, and the offense took a huge step back. So now you lose the other 3 pieces of that offense from 2 years ago. What are you going to get? So I'm not too keen on the offense. I think the defense will win them a lot of games that they shouldn't win.
And they also lost the other 5-star freshman, Williams Anwari. That's how you say his name. He transferred over to Nebraska. Now, he didn't play a ton last year, but that's a potential massive contributor if he would have panned out for this year. What I do like, though, you mentioned him, Josiah Trotter comes over. They also bring Damon Wilson, defensive end from Georgia, in, who was a pretty solid player for Georgia. I like that the defense was very quietly solid, like one of the better in the SEC. And I think they added some pieces to make that defense even a little bit better. What I don't like is, you alluded to this, Bo Perbula. I think he is incredibly boomer bust. I think he reminds me, and I know Penn State fans thought this as well, a little bit of Trace McSorley, but probably a little bit less accuracy and maybe not as skilled as a runner. Like Trace McSorley was slippery. He, had that little bit of a Johnny Manziel kind of run and just be able to evade people. I think Perbula is a little bit more of a power runner, and I think he is going to be incredibly boomer bust. I think we're going to see a couple games out of him where, he just goes off. But then it also wouldn't surprise me if there's 1 or 2 games where he's flirting with 50% passing, 2 interceptions and a fumble, and just the wheels fall off in a game or 2 this year.
Yeah.
So my concern is he's a little too loose with the football at times this year because he hasn't ever been the established starter. We saw him against Wisconsin. He had playing time, but now, he's under center full time.
I will add, where you lack in receivers, they did get Ahmad Hardy, who was a first team All Sun Belt guy out of Louisiana Lafayette, I believe. No, Louisiana Monroe. 1,300-yard rusher, 7 yards a carry. Can he translate that over the SEC? We'll find out.
At number 8 here, we have Texas A&M. You have them at 5. I have them at 11. We are very different on the SEC this year. We are very, very different. So what I don't like with Texas A&M this year, I don't like how they fell apart at the end of the year. Like, they just completely crumbled. And when you talk about a coach like Mike Elko, who has been a head coach, he was at Duke, he was doing pretty well. This felt a little bit Jimbo-ish, where there was a lot of hype and then you fall apart. And now you got a new coach and you get it going and then you fall apart. They lost all their SEC games in November last year. You can't have that happen again. And this year in November, they have Missouri, South Carolina, and Texas. Those are 3 games that are not going to be easy to win, especially when you're at Missouri and at Texas. The rest of the schedule is not any easier. You do luck out and you get 3 of the lower SEC teams with Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Auburn, but you also have a game at Notre Dame on the schedule. So I'm not in love with how they came together at the end of the year, how it basically fell apart. I do like that they settled in on a quarterback, though. I know Connor Wegman for the longest time, it was like they wanted Connor Wegman to be the guy, and he just couldn't. And then Marcel Reed came in, and he just ran wild against LSU last year. Just absolutely ran wild. And they put him under center, and they let him go. They brought in Jacob Zeno to be the backup and basically have told Jacob Zeno, you are backing up Marcel Reed. I think that there's potential for this A&M team to move up a lot. They bring in Casey Conception from NC State, a guy that can definitely make plays. Marcel Reed's arm does concern me a little bit because he definitely was more of a runner last year. So I want to see him progress as a thrower.
Yeah. And that's what I hate about this A&M team. I'm not a big fan of Marcel Reed's passing ability, not necessarily his ability, I guess. It would be his consistency. I think, like you said, when the wheels fell off, they fell off, and it was because Marcel Reed couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But then when he was on, man, he was on. And when his legs get moving and he's able to run, that team is almost impossible to beat. But I love how they invested in the offense and get a guy like Casey Concepcion, who, when healthy, is an amazing, amazing playmaker. NC State, his freshman year, just lit the world on fire. Was all ACC his first year. You also go get a guy, and you already had Terry Busey, but Mississippi State's Mario Craver, who, yes, he didn't have that much production, but he averaged 21, 22 yards a catch. So you have a guy in Casey Concepcion who can play the intermediate, the short game, and then you have a guy like Terry Busey who can take the top off. Not Terry Busey, Mario Craver, who can take the top off. So if Marcel Reed can improve his accuracy, can improve his consistency, and that could be as simple as footwork. A lot of times these running quarterbacks, they lack in footwork because they're so jittery. They want to run. So if he's able to adjust his footwork, man, this A&M team could be really good. They returned most of their defense. Now, the guys they lost, Nick Scourton, pretty darn good. The other defensive end that's now slipping my mind. He even went to the Panthers, which is why I should definitely know who he is. But
there's Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner,
and then Shamar Turner. So you lose those 3 guys. Those are the 3 guys you lose. That is insane amount of production. But the rest of the defense was pretty darn good too. We're going to find out if the defense was good because of those 3 guys, or if everybody else was pulling their weight too. So I think this A&M team could be legit because of Marcel Reed. And I always trust the defense because of Mike Elko. Mike Elko knows how to put a good product out there on the defensive side of the ball.
when in doubt, whatever the head coach's forte is, if you have questions about that and they're proving it on that side of the ball, usually you feel a little bit more confident. Like Mike Elko is a defensive guy. You have a better feeling. Lane Kiffin's an offensive guy. You have a feeling that Kirby Smart's a defensive guy. Even if everything falls off on one side of the ball, you have to feel that where their bread and butter is going to be okay. Doesn't matter who you lose, or even if it takes a step back, it's not like it's going to all of a sudden become the worst, because that's their bread and butter. That's what they know. So same thing with Texas A&M and Mike Elko here. Even if there's a step back, it still feels like that is still going to be a solid product out there, just because that is, his bread and butter. He is a defensive-minded guy. Clemson apparently only focuses on wide receivers.
Someone got to do it.
All right, at 7 here, we've got LSU, and once again, another wide gap. I had LSU actually, technically, we have a 3-way tie between Florida, South Carolina, and LSU, but we'll start with LSU. I had LSU at 4, you had LSU at 9. I'll go and say why I like LSU is I think Garrett Nussmeier is already a top 3 quarterback in the SEC, and I think he has a real chance to be a top 3 quarterback in the country this year. I think he can sling it. I think they're going to throw the ball around. I think LSU's offense is not going to be a problem again. I think similar to last year, Nussmeier was able to sling it around. I still think that he has an excellent chance to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
Yeah. Add in those receivers he's got and Anderson and Barry Brown. I mean, they're just loaded at the wide receiver position.
Oh, they got Chris Hilton there too. Like they've got plenty of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. The downside is there's 2 parts to this. Is Brian Kelly still is not an SEC fit. Brian Kelly would be phenomenal honestly, Brian Kelly at most of the Big Ten schools would be great. Like if you put him at Wisconsin, I think Brian Kelly would win 9 games every year.
That's a hot take. I like that take, Jake. That needs to go on the Twitters.
I think if Brian Kelly was the Wisconsin head coach, he'd win 9 games every single year without question. Or at least he would average 9 wins over like a 10-year span.
All right, think about this. Luke Fickell and Brian Kelly just swap jobs.
Luke Fickell, I think, is an even worse fit at LSU.
You think so? With what he knows offensively? I think he'd be better at LSU than he is at Wisconsin.
Luke Fickell's a defensive guy.
That's true. I was thinking offense because he brought the air raid to Wisconsin.
Yeah, and then he got rid of that real fast.
Yeah. You find out real quick what cornbread white boys can do. They can
the other thing I don't like about LSU is that we're still trying to figure out how to use Harold Perkins in like year 3.
Actually, we're year 4. You did year 1. You moved him back.
We're actually thinking year 4 of Harold Perkins. Yeah, we're still trying to figure out how to use him, and injuries have piled up that I'm not sure what we're going to get out of Harold Perkins at this point.
It seems like they're going to put him back in the position in which he's going to have to get back into coverage. Put the dude's hand in the dirt and let him run. Let him rush the passer.
Yeah, just make him an edge rusher, and he'll probably do just fine.
So
LSU.
What I don't like, I'll start off with what I like. Agree with you. Garrett Nussmeier in his offensive arsenal. We talked about already. Aaron Anderson is probably going to be one of the top, if not the top, wide receiver in the draft this year. He's up there with the Jordan Tyson of Arizona State. He is one of the better receivers in the country. He's a little short at 5'8", but he is so explosive.
Little short?
Yeah. Barry Brown at 5'11", another speedy dude who can just flat out take the top off the defense. So just they have playmakers, like you said, all over the wide receivers, all over in the wide receiver room. Caden Durham is a little improvement at running back. He averaged 5 yards a carry, but he didn't start any games last year. So what did he do? I like Garrett Nussmeier. I agree with you. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks, not only in the SEC, but in the country. I think he's very accurate. I think he makes good decisions with the football. However, the thing I hate about LSU, you're replacing 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line. You're only returning 16 total starts on the offensive line. If you include transfers, I think it's less than that. So very green, very new offensive line. That's not a recipe for winning in the SEC when you're going up against these dominant defensive fronts like a Georgia, like a Clemson in week 1.
Well, I would say not even to mention that week 1 they go on the road at Clemson. So your offensive line, which has not played together at all, there's no continuity. Now they're going into a hostile environment in week 1.
Right. And the thing I don't like is that with that poor offensive line, yes, you have a guy who can get rid of the football fast, who's a good decision maker in Garrett Nussmeier. However, if pressure is put on him, he is not a runner. He's not Jaden Daniels. He's not escaping the pocket and making something happen. He will be annihilated. So it could be a lot of dink and dunks. And if you're doing a dink and dunk offense, that's not two out of the 3 receivers. That's not their forte. Maybe Aaron Anderson's still gonna make some plays because he's a great, he can run the slant. He can make a play in the mid tier. But Barian Brown is going to win beating somebody deep. That is what he does. So you're not throwing many deep balls if you can't block.
The other team we had tied here with LSU, South Carolina. Tell me why people should like or not like South Carolina this year.
So my take on South Carolina is I think they've swapped what they were last year to what they are this year. So last year they were a top 15 defense. They won a lot of games because their defense and Lenora Sellers did enough to win. So the defense kept them in the games, and then Lenora Sellers would do enough to win. You think about the Clemson game. They win by a field goal. They win 17-14. You think about the Missouri game. You think about the A&M game where Lenora Sellers is making plays to let them win. You think about the LSU game that South Carolina is going to win if Sellers doesn't get hurt. You see what happens when you lose that guy who's doing enough to make you win. Well, now you lose 8 out of 11 starters on the defense. 8 out of 11. So that is insane when you're looking at return and production and what they're going to do. Phil Steele has them listed as 5 guys coming back. I don't think they had 5. I don't think they have 5 starters come back. I think that's incorrect. And if I would have to go through and name them on my hand, but I'm not confident in this year's defense. Yes, you still have Dylan Stewart, who is going to be a stud, but you lose Kyle Kennard, you lose Tonka Hemingway, you lose DJ Knightley, you lose Nick Emanwari, who is the heartbeat of that defense. So you lose a lot on that side of the ball, especially in culture guys. So you're going to find out what Clay White can do as a defensive coordinator over there in Columbia. But what I do love is Lenore Sellers. He's back. He's got a better wide receiver core than he did last year. Nick Harbor still has left a lot on the bone in terms of what he can do athletically versus what he does production-wise. He leaves a lot to be desired. Faison, the running back from Utah State, is still in limbo on where he's going to be. I think this is one of the most messed up situations the NCAA has gone through. They will not approve him. They won't even give him any answers, to the point where now South Carolina's went and got a running back out of Colorado, and his name is slipping my mind. But I love Mazio Bennett. I think he's an extremely good wide receiver. He's a sophomore. He started as a true freshman last year, made a lot of plays late. And then tight end Michael Smith. If you're into college football fantasy, or if you want to know a guy who no one really knows about right now, who I think is going to take a huge step forward, circle Michael Smith. True sophomore, 6'6", 250-pound receiving tight end. He is a freak, guys. He is a freak. He made Nick Emanwari look bad at practice multiple times last year. This guy can play. Circle that dude. So if South Carolina is going to be good, it's going to be because of the offense this year, not because of the defense. Long-winded answer.
Yeah. I mean, Lenora Sellers is the easy answer right there. I mean, he's one thing that I absolutely love. I mean, there's legitimate Heisman potential with Lenora Sellers. There's a reason why people are hyping him up as a potential number 1 pick, because the athletic traits are there. He's absolutely physically gifted. He is going to be a reason to watch South Carolina football this year. And I don't think many people are going to disagree with that. I am excited to see what he does. I think South Carolina, there's some tests in here. Virginia Tech is playing Vanderbilt and South Carolina this year. So Virginia Tech is going to be possibly in a really rough shape. But they open the season with Virginia Tech. They have Clemson, obviously, in the year. They've got A&M. There's some iffy games in here when you talk about, Missouri, when you talk about Ole Miss, when you talk about LSU, when you talk about A&M. How do they manage in these? If they win more than 70%, of them, they could be looking at a potential SEC championship because they have Alabama, but they don't have Texas. They get LSU on the road, but it really felt like last year a lot of these teams came to them last year, giving them a better shot. So now they go on the road. I don't know what to make out of this. I don't think that they're going to be a 9-win team. I don't think they're going to be a 10-win team. I think they're going to be an 8-4 team just because I don't think they beat Clemson this year. They do get Alabama at home. They do get Oklahoma at home, but LSU's on the road. I think there's too many games that are iffy for them to actually contend in the SEC championship this year. But the one thing that I don't like about this program is that somehow we are still hyping up Nick Harbor. Why are we still doing this? 2 years in, I know maybe year 3 is the breakout year. He has 2 games with more than 3 receptions. One is the bowl game against Illinois last year. We had 4 catches for 61 yards. And the other one was against A&M 2 years ago where he had 6 catches, 59 yards.
Let me stop you right there, though, Jake. Oh, go ahead.
But don't worry, he's a 99 speed in college football 25.
Well, and that's my point. The dude's a track guy. Why does he have 5 catches for 60 yards or however many it was?
He's never crossed his highest total 61 yards or 69 yards against Missouri. 2 catches for 69 yards.
Yeah.
He's
putting up tight end numbers as a ex receiver who's supposed to be beating guys on the outside. You're not that guy, pal.
The other program that we had tied here was Florida. So I had Florida at 7. You had Florida at 6. So we were much more aligned with this one. Now we both think that this is one of the first one in a while. We've actually been kind of aligned. So Florida, what do you like? What do you not like?
I love DJ Lagway. I think he's an excellent quarterback. Although I do think he's getting a little more hype than he deserves, and maybe that's me being a hipster. But I think he's an excellent quarterback. He can throw. He can run. He's got some durability issues because he had to run so much last year, got beat up a little bit. So can he stay healthy the entire year? Outside of that, what I don't like is who else do they have on that offense? I'm not a big Eugene Wilson guy. I mean, we'll see what he's made of. I don't really know what that offense is going to bring to the table outside of DJ Lagway. Can DJ Lagway do enough to bring them up? But maybe. But if he has to be the guy that puts the team on his back again, I think we're going to have another injury-ridden long year for Florida offense. I mean, I think it's just going to be tough. The defense, I never know what to think about this Florida defense anymore. I mean, last year I thought they were going to be an excellent defense. They were bad because they had a bunch of injuries the year before. They brought back everybody, and they were just bad. So I have no idea what to think of when it comes to the Florida defense. I'm the least out of the 3 that are tied. Florida would be my least confident that they do well this year.
Yeah, I mean, the easy part is what I like is TJ Lagway. I think long-term, he's talented enough to win the Heisman. He won't win the Heisman this year because there's not enough playmakers around him. Maybe somebody will step out. Maybe there will be some guys. I think DJ Lagway is talented enough to be a Heisman contender before his career is over. What I don't like is the schedule makers just continue to find ways to basically give Florida a super tough schedule. Once again, they have Miami on the road. They have LSU on the road. They have Texas. They have Texas A&M. They have Georgia. They still have Ole Miss, which we talked about. Maybe Ole Miss is good. Maybe they're not. Tennessee, maybe they're good. Maybe they're not. Florida State. I mean, I guess November, if they can get to November, they've got a real good shot at, potentially making a push further. Because the November games, November 1's Georgia, but then you get Kentucky, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida State. If we're talking about those teams from 2 years ago, or even 2 years ago, that this is not going to go well. If we're talking about some of these programs last year, Kentucky and Florida State are going to be a cakewalk. This upcoming year, you got to think Florida State can't be that bad again. They can't be 2-10 again, can they? Tommy Castellanos runs the ACC. Then
they could be 1-11.
They could be. Tennessee, I think we all believe they're going to take a step back. Ole Miss, they're going to take a step back. But is it a step back far enough for Florida to actually make a move? Their mid-September to early to November 1 is going to be tough. How many wins do they come out of there with? Here, legitimate question. LSU, Miami, Texas, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Georgia. Other than Mississippi State, what game do you feel confident about them winning?
None of those. I'm not confident.
I would pick A&M as my one where I would say if I was going to pick another one to pick my next conference, it'd be that one.
Miami?
Yeah, maybe Miami.
Miami and A&M would be my two.
LSU, I'd feel more confident if it was in the swamp, but it's in Death Valley, and that's going to basically be a loss. No offense, Florida.
Well, if their defense is healthy and their defense is good, LSU would be one to take advantage of with the poor offensive line.
So at number 4 here, we're under the top 4. We have Oklahoma. So I had Oklahoma at 6, and you had Oklahoma at 4. So they finish as our 4th team here. Why do you like Oklahoma this year?
I'm going to go ahead and get out in front of this again. Last year, I was draft nuts high on Indiana, right? I was banging the – I mean, and you can go back. This is not me trying to say that I'd always said that, just never out loud, and they end up being good. You can go back. I have receipts. Before the season started, in our Big Ten preview, I had Indiana as potentially winning 10 games. I was on the Choo-Chooser Express early. I'm not on that train this year. No, sirree. Oklahoma is where I'm going to be this year. That is the train. I'm getting on that wagon. I'm not falling off that thing. I am super duper duper high on Oklahoma this year. I've been getting a little bit of hate for this, but I love John Mateer. Every year, Jake, we have a quarterback who comes out of nowhere to be the dude and come up into the draft and be the guy. Cam Ward, you say, everybody kind of knew about Cam Ward. No one knew Cam Ward was going to be the number 1 overall pick. That wasn't on people's minds coming into him playing at Miami. And he just set the world on fire. John Mateer, from the same school that Cam Ward left from, is going to be that dude next. I also love that you have Jaden Ott in the backfield. You've got the guy who said he wasn't leaving, and 3 days later left California, one of the best running backs in the country, let alone the ACC. And then you got Deion Burks, a guy from Purdue, who I think is a really good playmaker. He's a what's the dude's name that tore Ohio State apart? Come on, Jake. I know you know what I'm talking about. Rondale Moore. He's Rondale Moore light.
Oh yeah.
I think he's got ability to play. So we'll see. Outside of John Mateer, I really want to see what the rest of that offense can do. But back into what I love and hate. Sorry, I got a little excited there. I love this defense. This defensive line could be one of the top 5 defensive lines in the country. Some talking heads even have them as the number 1 defensive line in the country. I don't. I was this little old school in the upstate of South Carolina. It's my number 1 defensive line in the country. And you have Brent Venables coaching this defense. You have eight guys returning on this defense. You got Brent Venables coaching it. I feel really confident about this defense. What I don't like, I kind of alluded to it a second ago. Did they get John Mateer good enough pass catchers to make a difference? I don't know. I think John Mateer is head and shoulders better than Jackson Arnold. However, I think when they were healthy, Jackson Arnold's arsenal could be more talented than what they had this year. So if they're going to have an Achilles heel, it's going to be that wide receiving core. But if you're able to run the ball with Jaden Dot well enough and you play great defense, all John Mateer has to do is go out there and not throw picks. He threw 29 touchdowns and 7 picks last year, so he doesn't turn the ball over too much. I'm excited about Oklahoma. They're a dark horse playoff team to me.
I think the Cam Ward comparison to where they came from, because they're very different players, makes a lot of sense because, well, A, they both came from Washington State, but B, both were starting quarterbacks and both transferred to much bigger programs.
And both have the same offensive coordinator.
Yeah, same offensive coordinator. Both are transferring for, a little bit different reasons. But I really like John Mateer, but people know who he is, but they're not expecting him to have that rise to stardom. That was the same thing with Cam Ward. People knew who he was, but they weren't expecting him to rise to stardom and be the number 1 overall pick. Jaden Ott, you talked about him, great running back. I'm not going to talk too much more about him. Comes from Cal. That duo right there should be one of the best in the SEC. The part that I don't like, and I think this is going to be a major concern, it was the offensive line was one of the worst in college football last year. I believe they led the Power 4 in sacks allowed last year. They allowed more than 50 sacks last year, which you cannot have. When you're going against SEC defensive lines, you cannot be allowing more than 50 sacks for the course of the season. That has to get better.
And it can if your quarterback plays better. Sometimes sacks are not on the offensive line. We got to remember that.
No, I'll give you Summer on the quarterback, but that's still not good because even if you equate 15, 20% of them to the quarterback, you're still in the 30,
that's true,
upper 30s or low 40s.
Also, I need to correct myself. Arbuckle was not with Cam Ward. He was at Western Kentucky when Cam Ward was at Washington State. Sorry about that.
Gotcha. So I am concerned about this offensive line. They do get a tune-up game against Illinois State. They do get Michigan, but Michigan does not have Kenneth Grant or Mason Graham, so you have that. They have Temple, which they will lose to Temple on the road on September 13th. Hashtag Temple Talk. Make it into every single one of our episodes somehow. Always find a way. But then they get a little bit of a break. You get Auburn, Kent State before you play the Red River rivalry in the middle of October. So this offensive line has a chance to gel together before they really get into the heart of the SEC, which I think can help, especially when you got a new quarterback. You're trying to make sure you get snap counts right. You got a dynamic running back. I think there's a chance for them to improve, but it's one thing that I'm going to be watching this year is how does that offensive line progress? Number 3, we both agree here. We got Alabama at number 3. I think we both have a similar feeling about this. One thing I like is I think Caleb DeMore is a good coach. We saw him take Washington to the national championship game. That's not an easy task. He helped turn Washington into the program that it was for that short period of time. They were slinging it around. The thing I don't like is other than Ryan Williams, I'm really unsure what this offensive identity looks like. Justice Haynes goes in the portal. Last year, obviously Jalen Milroe, your quarterback. This year, it's rumored that Ty Simpson is probably going to be the guy. Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe are very different quarterbacks. Very, very different quarterbacks. And the running back, it looks like Richard Young. He played last year, but there's not a lot of experience at running back. The wide receiver room circles around Ryan Williams, who is now 18 years old, FYI. He is no longer 17, in case anybody was curious.
Also, don't forget about Jam Miller in that running back room. I think Jam
Miller, yes. Yeah, Jam Miller. So I think that their offensive line will be fine, but what does the identity look like? How does Ty Simpson change his offense? They bring in Ryan Grubb, who was the offensive coordinator with Kalen DeBoer at Washington and at Fresno State, which seemed like a very good pairing. They obviously had good wide receivers. Michael Penix could sling the ball. I just don't know what this offensive identity is going to be with a very different quarterback room.
Yeah, no, and to piggyback, you have playmakers littered on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. We talk about Jam Miller. We talk about Ryan Williams. You talk about Keon Sabb. You talk about a guy who could be a first-round draft pick on Devontae Jackson. So, LT Overton. You've got some guys all over this team.
Xavier Brown made the game-winning interception against Georgia last year as a true freshman.
Right. So you've got dudes everywhere. I love that. And then, to add to that, you have Ryan Grubb who comes in, and him and Kalen DeBoer go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're just a phenomenal pairing. But just like Auburn, except I have more confidence in the rest of this roster than I do with Auburn, and I have more confidence in Ty Simpson than I do with Jackson Arnold, is the quarterback. Who is Ty Simpson? He's a junior starting for the first time, essentially. He's got a 5-star in Keelan Russell nipping at his heels. But who is he? What's he going to do? What's the identity of this team? You don't have a Jalen Milroe who's going to run around and bail you out. So you really have to have that old pro-style offense that Nick Saban was famous for running and winning a lot of games. So we'll see what happens. Alabama's always going to be in the top 3 in the SEC. I feel like that's just
talent-wise alone, they're going to put themselves in there.
So I'm confident that they'll finish in the top 4. You can interchange them with any team in the top 4. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama wins the SEC. That's what's crazy. But I think they're more likely to be in that 3-4 range.
Yeah, I agree. For number two, here, what Georgia defense always have mastered. They had they recruit
Jake, I think we lost you.
Yeah.
Not yet. You mean kick Georgia off?
Okay, what I do like about Georgia this year, I think the defense is just going to be good no matter what. No matter who is back there, Kirby Smart always recruits well. They always develop their talent well. You never have to worry about what we were talking about earlier with Lane Kiffin, offensive side of the ball. You never have to worry. Georgia, defensive side of the ball. Doesn't matter if they take a step back for a year. You know that they're going to come back strong. The one thing I do hate about Georgia this year is I am not a Gunnar Stockton guy. After watching him against Notre Dame, I know he, only had a month to prepare. But the thing is, he had a month to prepare. It's not like he was thrown. It's not like he was thrown in like he was, against
Texas and looked good.
Yeah, against Notre Dame, he did not look good. And now, granted, part of it was, Arian Smith could not catch the ball. Georgia led FBS in drops last year. So there were a couple times where guys dropped balls and they shouldn't have. But Gunnar Stockton does not strike me as the guy who's going to make enough plays. Now, granted, Stetson Bennett didn't either. And he still won, 2 national championships. So that doesn't mean that just because Gunnar Stockton is not going to be, the best quarterback in the SEC, that he can't win national championships.
Well, what helps is when you bring in a guy like Zachariah Branch and you have a guy like Oscar Delp that's already there. You go and you get a Noah Thomas out of A&M. You go and get a Colby Young Jr. out of Miami. So you notice, right? Hey, which I got him 2 years ago. Our wide receivers sucked. How do we fix this? Let's go get some wide receivers out of the portal. We're not good enough there. Oscar Doppel's already there. He's a really good tight end. I think he'll be another one of those dudes. He's not Brock Bowers by any means, but he's a really good tight end who can make plays, who can block. You don't know what the team is going to do when he's on the field. So, like you, Gunnar Stockton does not excite me. You watch the Notre Dame game, and that now, to Notre Dame's credit, they had a great game plan. The defense played phenomenally. That was just a really well-oiled machine. However, Gunnar Stockton made some great throws that Arian Smith just didn't help him out. Which was the same thing with Carson Beck. So it's not like it was a Carson Beck issue. It was an Arian Smith issue. So can Gunnar Stockton take a step forward after being the guy through spring, through summer? We'll see. I like Nate Frazier. He can really help out a lot at running back if you have a guy who can make plays, and he's got good hands. So that's going to be good. And then, like you said, you can set the clock to Georgia's defense just being excellent. So I don't have that listed on one of these. I have what I love is the Georgia pass catchers, like I already said. So pair that with a good defense, Georgia's going to be Georgia.
Finally, we got Texas at number 1 here. I think this is pretty easy. Why we like them, why we don't like them. Why we like them for sure, and I'll let you say yours then. So I think that they have a ton of star power all over this team. When you talk about on the offensive side, you've got Quintavious Wisner, you've got Ryan Wingo. On the defensive side, you got Colin Simmons. I mean, you even have a guy like CJ Baxter coming back. I think that there is enough talent on both sides of this team that they should be clear national championship favorites. You got like Michael Taffet is back as a safety. My concern is they do lose a lot of players on both sides of the ball. When you talk about on the offensive and defensive side, a guy like Matthew Golden is gone. Jaden Blue is gone. Obviously, Quinn Ewers is gone. But to me, the biggest issue is they lost Kelvin Banks and Cameron Williams, both their left and right tackle. You lost both of your tackles, and you have a new quarterback coming in. And with the first game being Ohio State and the schedule that they play in the SEC this year with Ohio State, you have Oklahoma, you have Georgia, you have Texas A&M. But other than that, like the schedule is fairly favorable to them. But 10-2 might still be a really, really good season to them, because that first game against Ohio State, I think everybody doesn't know what's going to happen because we've got a lot of new faces being in that game. But they get a chance to get it together. But they've got some veteran leadership on that team to help weather any storms that they have.
Yeah. I love this Texas defense. That's going to help Arch Manning. Obviously Arch Manning started in a few games last year and played in some big time moments as well. But if you just look at this defensive line and Colin Simmons and Travis Shaw, just studs on the defensive line. You've got Anthony Hill at middle linebacker, who's a freak. You've got Malik Muhammad, who's come back. You've got Michael Taft, like you mentioned, come back. Shout out the walk-ons. So the defense is reloaded. Yes, they lost 4 guys on the defense, but the majority of that team is there. Now, you return 4 guys in the offense. That's what I hate. And with returning only 4 guys that started on the offense, you've got a lot of rat poison around this program. There's a lot of people feeding them that they're going to be the national champions, which may be true. You better not buy into that, because like you said, you start off with Ohio State week 1. You don't have time to sit there and get your toes wet. You're jumping in cannonball. You're playing in the playoffs week 1. Boom. Mm-hmm. Figure it out. It's a rematch to one of the best postseason football games I've ever seen. Just a phenomenal football game. I think Texas is built for a lot, and I think a lot rides on Arch Manning's shoulders, and I think he can carry it. I don't want to be cliche. I don't think he's going to come out here and win the Heisman. Can he win the Heisman with a little bit of an above-average year? I think so, with the amount of hype that he has and the amount of eyeballs he has on him. I don't think he's going to do anything out of this world. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think all he has to do is be a good quarterback. He doesn't have to be a Heisman winner to come out here and run college football. I mean, like you said, we've got Quentin Wisner at running back. When a quarterback has a good defense and a good running back, that really helps them get their feet under them. We'll find out what happens against Ohio State, but I'm very confident this team is going to do a lot of – they're going to be similar to last year.
I agree with you. And let us know where you disagree with our rankings. I mean, we disagree with ourselves because we had so many differences here.
This is probably the biggest differences we've had of all the conferences.
Yeah, and I think partially because even in here, you kind of saw there was a couple tiers. There was tier 1, which we both had it, and then there was like a second tier, which you could move a couple around, but there was a clear second tier, clear third tier, and then there was a clear bottom tier for us. But with that being said, let us know where you disagree with your rankings. Make sure to go listen, rate, like the podcast. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, anywhere you get it. Go check out the walkonredshirts.com. We'll have some content coming out here as the season gets started. Has some definitely exciting things coming here for the fall. And with that being said, we have a very exciting episode next week. We'll tease that on social media here over the next week or so. But we've got an exciting episode coming next week. With that being said, we'll see everybody next week.
See you.